My name is Caleb Arsenault. I am the lead game producer on Diablo Immortal.
Hi, I'm Chris Zerhut. I'm a senior system designer on Diablo Immortal.
You recently held a technical alpha for Diablo Immortal. Has player feedback affected development or the game's direction? And if so, in what way?
Yes, I can give you a couple good examples of where player feedback helped us make changes to the game. In fact, I give the 3 examples I give you of where player feedback changed the game. So the first is in questing. So unlike a lot of previous Diablo games, Diablo Immortal is an MMO. It's going to have hundreds, actually thousands of other players on the same server with you. And we weren't sure what impact this was going to have in the outdoor world adventuring of the characters. And what we heard from the alpha was a consistent complaint that when people were out trying to do quests, they would run into a situation like the following. You know, they're looking for, let's say, 12 zombies they have to kill, and some demon hunter comes through, strafing everything in sight, tags
Mostly
every
demon
monster
hunters.
around them.
Yeah.
And demon hunters frequently, yes. And they tag every monster in sight, and then when they went to attack those monsters, they were all tagged. They didn't get credit for their quest. And so they didn't get credit for those monsters. They wait for them to come back, and another player comes through and does this to them again. So they're having a really bad time trying to complete the quests. And this is a problem other MMOs have had, but we weren't sure how bad it was going to be in our game, and it was worse than we thought it would be. So we decided to make a change to the rules of the game for completing quests and other types of tasks, which is if someone else attacks the monster first, but you assist them, that you also attack that monster, also do damage to it, also fight them, both or many players will get credit for the monster. Everyone who participated in defeating that monster will get credit towards their quests and tasks to make progress on the story and the things they're trying to get done in the game. That even extends to when there's a boss. If multiple people are attacking the boss, even though one person may have attacked it first, all the attackers will get credit and loot from the boss they killed. So that's one really good example of where we needed to see how it operated in-game to know what adjustments we need to make. We debated a lot before, and then the experience gave us a clear decision. Another good example with the wizard class. We saw some feedback from the alpha that the wizard class felt underpowered, or people felt like it wasn't as strong or as good as it should be. And digging into that a little bit, the reason why is because many people expect the wizard to be a kiting class, where I attack a monster and then I lead it around in circles and fight the monster using controls to slow it down and doing lots of damage to it without taking any damage myself. And this is a classic wizard playstyle, but the wizard was having a really hard time doing that. And what it came down to is the wizard relies on some control skills, particularly skills that chill the enemy, which chilling means that their attacks and their movement are slowed down. And the wizards were relying on this, but the chill duration was too short. So all of the chill abilities that the wizard uses have had their durations increase. Some of the other classes also have chills, and their durations remain the same, but the wizard's chills last longer. And in particular, the skill Ray of Frost felt underpowered or ineffective because of how fast the chill would wear off. You would shoot your Ray of Frost. It didn't do a lot of damage, but it chilled them. You start to run away to do something else, and the monsters would catch up with you immediately. So we made a design change there. In addition to the increased duration, Ray of Frost now accumulates chill on the monster. So the more times it gets hit with that Ray of Frost, the more and more and more chill it gets until it's moving very slowly. Now you've got time to get away, blast it with something else, use a combo like Scorch with Arcane Wind to get an Inferno effect to blow up the monster, do a ton of damage that wasn't really possible until you had good kiting skills like Ray of Frost is becoming. And then a third example I can give you is that we had some feedback in the alpha that people were sad that it took so long to get to Westmarch. It's this really cool city with all these players running around, but they didn't see it until they were, up in their, level 30 and beyond. So we decided to modify the story. So after you finish the second zone, which is Ashwald Cemetery, you'll get a chance to go to Westmarch, see it much sooner, get introduced to some of the cool locations and characters and gameplay mechanics and gameplay activities you have, and they get sent back out into the field. So you go back to Westmarch, you check in with Deckard Cain for some advice, you go adventure some more, and then that repeats. So come back to Westmarch, get advice, go back out again, and so it becomes kind of this ongoing thing where Westmarch is the home camp you're coming to in the story frequently instead of just that one time.
So that's fascinating that you say that you're making it more of an MMO. So I guess that leads me to ask, how are you striking the balance between creating an enjoyable MMO and creating the ideal mobile Diablo experience?
One of the things that's really important to us is that we make an uncompromised action RPG. Like, that is objective number one. It's one of the things that we've spent the most time on, is bringing the feeling of Diablo to like a touch screen on mobile. So I would say that we took that as, priority number one, an awesome action RPG. Then what we've done is marry that to MMO social features. So one of the anecdotes I have is that from Tech Alpha, what I wanted to do is I really was eager to see the public start to come in. And so I actually joined the Australian server where we were doing some of our testing. And I waited essentially off in the bushes where I knew new players would needed to come through from when they were going from zone number 1, where our tutorial is, to zone 2, which is our first sort of big open world zone. And I knew where they were going to come through. So I just kind of hung out in the bushes until like you started seeing players trickle in to the zone for the first time ever. Then you start seeing like zone chat start getting populated. And then people started asking like, hey, oh my gosh, like I want to do this dungeon. Does anyone else want to come hang out and do this dungeon with me? And so to start seeing that's the feeling we were trying to strike, and the balance between just having awesome action RPG combat and these cool social things that people have never really experienced in a Diablo game before.
To elaborate on that real fast, you guys obviously have another game that's a huge MMO. Has that team been able to help you work with the difficulties or the tech issues that you were having with on the mobile side of it being an MMO with multiple players being in instances together and stuff like that?
I think a lot of people all around Blizzard are veterans of working on, I think you're referring to World of Warcraft. I'm a World of Warcraft veteran. Wyatt Cheng's worked on it. Helen Cheng's worked. Lots of people on our team have spent time on that team, artists and producers, etc. So we all have experience both as developers and as players of World of Warcraft and understanding how MMOs work, and that's helped inform the decisions we make. Now, that doesn't mean that we say, oh, it works like this in World of Warcraft, so we're going to copy it. It's more like we saw what happened there, and it gives us a really good, well-informed idea of what is likely to happen in our game, and then we decide how do we want that to work in Diablo Immortal? How do we want to solve that problem in Diablo Immortal?
We've seen a lot of Diablo at BlizzConline. Do you feel that with Diablo 4 getting closer to release and Diablo 2 Resurrected being announced, that there's now more pressure on the Diablo Immortal team to create a truly great Diablo game?
Oh, well, I think we felt that pressure
From day one.
From the moment we started this project. But it's not really pressure. I would just say it's normal for Blizzard, right? And I think if you look at, when did we announce this game? It was in 2018, and here we are at 2021. And that is not by accident. That is on purpose, because we care very much about the quality of this game. And we've spent a lot of time polishing, like not just like creating from scratch, but actually iterating upon to improve the content and the features that we have. And so it's top of mind for all of us, because one of our core values at Blizzard is, to commit to quality, and we recognize that because this is our first true mobile game. Hearthstone is available to play on mobile, but for us, this is our first real natively mobile title. We feel like there is scrutiny, and that it's important for us to prove to our fans that they can trust us on mobile too. That it is something that they should expect. And that actually extends, I want to talk about audio. So most mobile titles, or most mobile players turn off audio. It's like somewhere around 60% of players just don't ever turn on audio for their mobile games. Like, you guys probably can attest to this, that, most of the time your phone's on vibrate anyway, and you're just going to play and do whatever. And that is okay. If you want to play Diablo Immortal like that, you totally can. But we felt like, because we have a world-class audio music department, that if someone does flip that switch on, they do want to hear either the VO or the music or the sound design, that we show up, right? That we're like, no, this is Blizzard, just like, we've always been. And so I would say that is the priority we have toward storytelling, audio design, music is on par with any other game we've made.
And we want to make the highest quality game we can make. Like I said, we have people who are long-term veterans working on other projects at Blizzard. We want this project to be just as great as all the ones we worked on before.
Yeah.
You sort of touched on this by talking about the MMO side of it, but what else gameplay-wise has the mobile gaming platform opened up for Diablo Immortal that wouldn't normally be possible in a mainline Diablo game?
So in some ways, the controls are very different, and the controls being different opens up some new possibilities. So let's start with the fact that it's a dual stick control. Traditional Diablo games are a click to move. So I say, where do I want to move? Click on the screen there. My character automatically walks to that point and stops, right? Maybe they attack things along the way. In this game, we've got a joystick. So your virtual joystick, so you're moving in a direction and you have control over your movement at all times instead of the game pathing for you. This lets us create new combat opportunities. Imagine you have a rift where the floor is covered in ice and you have momentum. So as you're moving on that stick, your character, when you stop moving, will keep on going that direction because the ice is on the ground. Or there's a wind blowing against you that you have to push against to get through. We've already started putting mechanics like that in the game, and they wouldn't have been possible without that dual stick control that we're doing on touchscreen. They wouldn't have worked in Diablo 3 PC, for example. Wouldn't make sense at all. And then on top of that, we've been able to experiment a lot with the way the controls work. Because it's a touchscreen, we can make controls change dynamically in the game based on where your fingers are, based on what the ability is. If I equip a new legendary affix, it may change my ability to have a different control screen. Each of the individual abilities have their own stick for aiming. It lets us do a lot of stuff with controls that you couldn't do with a traditional interface. So it opened up some new space for us.
What are the challenges in designing something like, an exciting multi-person raid while sticking with the philosophy that Immortal is meant for shorter gaming sessions?
Wouldn't say that we have a philosophy that Immortal is meant for shorter gaming sessions. We have a philosophy that Immortal is meant for many different lengths of gaming sessions. So, for example, you're in the doctor's office, you're waiting for your appointment, you got 5 minutes to kill, you can open up Diablo Immortal and go do an Elder Rift. Rifts are intended to take less than 5 minutes. Or you want to pick up a bounty, teleport out in the world and go working on it. Maybe you don't finish it, but we have every character has the ability to teleport back to Westmarch at will, and that ability has a 5-minute cooldown for a reason. It's so you can feel like you can at any time go adventure in the world, and if something comes up, you get an important phone call, you get an interruption, you can just hit that button, you're back in town, you're safe, and resume what you wanted to do later. So we definitely are supporting those quick 5-minute play sessions, but at the same time, we also have our set piece dungeons where you go fight King Leoric or the Countess that may take a half an hour to do, where you're gonna want to do it with 3 of your friends. You're going to spend some time putting together a group, working together, fighting your way through it, and they take more time investment. And maybe it was so fun, you want to do more runs back to back to back. We saw that happen a lot in the Tech Alpha. Let's go do Countess runs, and people would do Countess over and over again for multiple hours. So we have the full gamut of how long you want to invest in playing the game.
What we saw during Technical Alpha too is that people on average were playing a lot longer per session than we initially thought they would. It was upwards of 45 minutes, for multiple sessions a day. And that was really interesting to us because it reflected, I think, people's enthusiasm about the game, but also sort of how good it felt for them to sort of dive in and experience this for the first time. And at least in my own play sessions, I play a lot while I'm sitting on my couch watching like Netflix. Like that's where I kind of play my mobile titles, is by doing kind of 2 things at once, and when I'm just relaxing, and that's where I put in a lot of time in Immortal as well.
Are there plans for any kind of PvP in Diablo Immortal?
Yes.
So yes is the answer. One thing I want to say is that in Tech Alpha we really didn't have our end game. And we had our, the beginning of the game, we had some, mid-game systems in play. But the level cap is 45. The end level cap is going to be 60 for launch. And there's a lot more PvE and PvP content we have planned that we're not talking about today, but we will be talking about soon. And I want to say that like the scope of the game is only partially revealed. What we have left is sizable.
And to follow up specifically on PvP, during Tech Alpha, we did have a PvP event in the game, so you could start to see what PvP is going to be like. In the Bilefen, there's an arena that occurs every several hours, a little bit like the Gurubashi Arena in World of Warcraft, and it was an extremely popular event. People would go out of their way to be there. People like, oh, it's going to start in 10 minutes. Let's stop running dungeons. Let's go over there and get ready. People were excited to do it, and it had a huge amount of participation.
I think one of the takeaways I had is that I thought I was really good at PvP, and then we let the public in, and then I realized I was not any good at PvP.
Yeah, every developer learns that, Caleb.
Yeah, exactly.
Are there plans for another playable alpha or beta in the near future?
We're currently in our public testing phase, and that there will be additional testing phases. I would say we have more testing ahead of us than we have behind us at this point. And I think that's a really important part of how Blizzard is approaching the development of Immortal, is that we are taking in players a lot sooner than we probably would have in previous Diablo titles, and making sure that the game, number one, is technically stable, that server login issues are not in there, but also that we get players' feedback. And so we will continue to test the game.
And last one for me, what have been the biggest technical challenges in designing Diablo for mobile versus designing Diablo for PC or console? And I asked that thinking about just the multitude of Android devices that are out there. Like, what have been some of the biggest technical challenges you've faced?
Sure. So for technical alpha, we were pretty narrow in the devices that we were testing, and that was on purpose because we wanted to validate that we were like very compatible. Performance was where we wanted it to be. Data usage was where we wanted it to be. All those sort of device specific elements. But then as we move forward, we're going to widen the compatibility list, because ultimately we want as many players as possible to be able to come into the game and have a good experience. So we haven't verified or confirmed what our minimum spec will be on phones, because we're still testing and we're investigating. One really cool thing though is that even if you don't have the very latest phone, we want you to be able to play, and then you can even adjust your graphical settings within the game. So you can set, I prefer frame rate over the visuals, or I can actually know my phone is pretty recent, so I'm gonna crank it all the way up to ultra. And there's also for some phones a 60 FPS setting, where you can actually go from 30 FPS where the game is by default, and actually go to 60 frames per second, which feels really good too. But we always want to make sure that the 30 frames per second experience is available on as many devices as we can.